Today, the Rotary Club of Denver welcomes to our podium Gregg Rippey. And as Jim mentioned, Gregg is the grandson of our longtime member and, in fact, a 51-year longtime member of our club, Arthur Rippey. Arthur joined Denver Rotary in 1944. His classification was Visual Training and Promotion, and partner of the Arthur G. Rippey and Company. So today, we celebrate the direct line of talent to Gregg. We know that Arthur has to be pleased and proud that his grandson has taken visual to the brave new world of the internet. The speed of change is so fast that maybe even the young, bright whiz kids of our new electronic era have to be fleet-footed. I've known Gregg Rippey since before he found computers, which is quite a long time now. Gregg grew up in Denver and was first exposed to computing in high school. He majored in computer science at Dartmouth College, and we returned to our fair city in 1987 to work for the software company J.D. Edwards. He spent 13 years there as a programmer and a consultant. Now, Gregg spends his days as a computer doctor who makes house calls and office calls. He really loves being able to remove obstacles for his clients so they can enjoy using their computers, cell phones, cameras, etc. Now that said, if the tech manufacturers out there somehow made their products easy to use and turned tech support from a torturous process into something pleasurable, driving Gregg out of business, he says he would welcome that with open arms. Well, now it looks like Gregg is going to need to help us for years to come, as the technocrats are going to keep running ahead, and he's going to help us join the race and participate fully in this brave new world. Gregg Rippey.
Good afternoon. It certainly is a treat to be addressing you all with our family history with Rotary. And I have to tell you, as a kid, my granddad, and later in life, had an antique car museum. And when I saw the gear wheel emblem of Rotary, I just assumed it was people who got together to talk about cars. And I thought, boy, they have a lot of meetings to just talk about cars. And it was later in my life that I probably 2 years ago, that I realized that this was not an automotive association, but I've come to appreciate what Rotary does, and I've heard some great things this afternoon as well. Well, what a treat it is for me. I'm a lucky person because I get to work in an area that I really enjoy, and I got to tell you, the internet, more than anything, just cracks me up on a daily basis. And I don't mean to minimize the fact that there are things going on the internet that are very unsavory and dangerous to our society. But what I would like to focus on today is how the internet, in my opinion, is very much not the negative utopia of Huxley's Brave New World, but has just amazing potential to not only service us as a society, but entertain us and bring a lot of joy as well. So my goals for today are brief. The first is to give you some background and some definitions. And then secondly, we'll talk about what's new, and we'll do a little sightseeing, as in website seeing, and I may run down to the computer there for the end of the presentation to do that. That's not a trademark name, by the way. I was just being silly. So how it all began. Our story today begins, as any good story does, with a Soviet threat to our national security. And that's not really funny, but in 1957, the first Sputnik satellite was launched by the USSR. And interestingly, even though the word Sputnik in Russian actually means traveling companion, I think it's safe to say that was a little lost in translation over here in the United States. The launch of that satellite caused tremendous concern about our security and launched a number of projects that directly led to the internet. In 1960, the invention of the laser, the first laser was successfully tested in 1960. I don't think you wanted to be the person who went before that who unsuccessfully tested the laser, but there was a successful test in 1960. That, I'll mention its relevance in a little bit. In 1969 and 1970, the Department of Defense had an agency called the Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they developed over the course of that year a four-station or four-node network between the universities that you see up there in Utah and in California, and it basically was the initial iteration of what the internet is today. It was communication lines that were connecting these four universities. And what was interesting and unique about them is that they were designed to study how data could be transmitted among these four locations without being subject to being interrupted or without being subject to a catastrophe of some kind. So the idea would be that from the University of Utah, if a message needed to be sent to Stanford, that message could be sent out and not just have one choice of how to get there, but have multiple choices. And there's a concept called packet switching, which you may not hear much more about after today, because it's not, but it's a critical underlying element of the internet. And packet switching just means if I have some information I need to send to you, and if we pretend that everyone in this room is a computer on the internet, if I need to send this message to Lee, I can effectively throw that message out. It will be broken up into packets, into pieces that might transmit through any one of you who are here. And if my parents have left the room, they don't need to be a critical path to get to Lee. It might go around another way. And also that message will be smart enough to know that it arrived and that it arrived intact. So the overall goal of all this was to make sure that communications could take place even if bombs are dropping and satellites are zapping us and so forth. And that was the whole point of getting this started in 1970. Al Gore, by the way, had just graduated from Harvard and was over here somewhere in Massachusetts and had nothing to do with this step. I wasn't quite sure if that was still topical enough, but thank you for laughing at that. So anyway, in 1974, that was about the first time that the actual word internet was used to apply toward this growing network of computers. But really the biggest next thing that happened was in the late 1980s. And to illustrate my third grade level cut and paste, this gentleman's name is Tim Berners-Lee. And he, in the late 80s and 1990s, was working in the European Particle Physics Lab in Geneva, of all things, and came up with the idea of taking what's known as hypertext. And what hypertext is just